I had always believed in love as something sacred, patient, and unshakable. I thought that the vows we made were more than mere words, they were a promise that we would stand together through every storm. I remember the day I walked down the aisle, my heart pounding, my hands trembling, and my eyes brimming with tears of joy. Malik stood at the altar, smiling, holding my hands as if nothing in the world could ever harm us. I believed in the us that only we could understand, the quiet bond we shared through the struggles of life, and the dreams we built together. But everything I believed in shattered in one sentence. It happened on an evening I thought was ordinary. The dinner table was quiet, lit by the warm glow of the chandelier, the scent of the food comforting, almost domestic. I had spent hours cooking, wanting to create a sense of normalcy, a sense of warmth that had slowly been fading from our marriage. Malik sat across from me, picking at his plate, scrolling on his phone, occasionally glancing up. And then, without warning, the words came. "Nobody else wanted you," he said, his voice calm and cold. "I married you out of pity." Time stopped. My fork fell to the plate with a sharp clatter. My hands trembled, my heart raced, and my chest tightened as if someone had struck me. I blinked, thinking I had misheard him, but no, the words hung in the air like venom, crawling into every corner of my mind. Pity, after all the love, all the sacrifices, all the nights I stayed awake worrying about him, supporting him, helping him chase his dreams. Was that all I had been to him, an option of last resort? I wanted to scream, to throw plates, to beg him to take it back. But the energy to react physically or emotionally had drained from me in an instant. My world had tilted on its axis. For years, I had poured my heart into this man, and now it felt as if every drop of love had been wasted on someone who never truly wanted me. I left the table without a word, feeling the cold weight of betrayal sink into my bones. Outside, the night wrapped around me like a bitter friend, the chill cutting through my dress and whispering in my ears. I walked aimlessly, letting the empty streets absorb my grief. Every streetlight seemed to mock me, reminding me that the person I had trusted most had reduced me to nothing. I remembered my mother's words from long ago, "Never let anyone make you feel small. There is power in your dignity and strength in your patience." I clung to that advice like a lifeline. This was more than heartbreak. This was the moment I realized my life could no longer be dictated by someone else's cruelty. Sitting on a cold bench, I felt tears burn my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I let anger and clarity rise. I knew I had to rebuild, to rise above this betrayal. Pity had never built anything strong, but determination could. I made a silent vow. Malik may have thought he had destroyed me, but he had only awakened a strength he could never understand. I would not retaliate with spite or revenge born of malice. Instead, I would reclaim my life, my independence, and my dignity. Every step I took from that night on would be deliberate, every choice a quiet assertion of my worth. I would transform the pain of being dismissed, of being belittled, into something beautiful, undeniable, and irreversible. And so, under the cold embrace of the night, I began my journey. Malik may have married me out of pity, but the woman he tried to diminish would rise, not in anger, but in brilliance. And when she did, he would finally see that what he thought was insignificant had become unstoppable. The days following Malik's cruel words were a blur of anger, disbelief, and quiet plotting. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard him, "Nobody else wanted you. I married you out of pity." The words were like knives, slicing into the core of my being. Yet, amidst the hurt, a spark began to form, small at first, almost imperceptible, but growing steadily. If he thought pity could break me, he was gravely mistaken. I refused to remain a victim in the shadow of his arrogance. I threw myself into my work, which had always been my sanctuary. Years ago, I had started a small online business selling handmade jewelry, delicate pieces, each infused with care and creativity. Malik had laughed at it, calling it a childish hobby that would never bring in real money. That same laughter now fueled me. I devoted every spare hour to learning marketing strategies, reaching out to influencers, photographing my pieces with precision, and creating an online presence that demanded attention. Each bracelet, necklace, and ring became a testament to my determination, each sale a quiet victory over the man who had dismissed me. Malik, as usual, remained oblivious. He carried on with his life, oblivious to the small but growing empire I was quietly building. He assumed I would stay at home, waiting, fragile, and dependent. He assumed that his pity had me trapped. I let him underestimate me. No one ever sees a storm brewing until it hits, and I intended to strike not with anger, but with undeniable success. The transformation was not only professional, it was personal. I rediscovered the woman I had lost, the confident, ambitious, radiant woman who had once dreamed of a life beyond the walls of this toxic marriage. I started exercising not just to look good, but to feel powerful. I spent evenings reconnecting with old friends, mending relationships that had been strained, and building a support system outside of Malik's world. Slowly, I was becoming unrecognizable even to myself. The sadness that had once consumed me was giving way to a new energy, focused, precise, and beautiful. And yet, I kept my progress hidden. I smiled at Malik, nodded at his complaints, and endured his jabs with a polite grace that hid the fire burning inside me. Every time he spoke down to me, every time he dismissed me as insignificant, I catalogued it. I made mental notes, stored away his arrogance and cruelty, all for a day when I would show him that pity is never as powerful as perseverance. One evening, he criticized my handling of household finances, a topic he had always used to assert superiority. He sneered, "You're hopeless with money. No one would trust you to manage anything." I smiled inwardly. What he didn't know was that I had quietly invested, saved, and learned. My little jewelry business was growing faster than he could imagine, my bank account swelling with proof that I no longer needed him or his validation. The most satisfying part of this transformation was the quiet power I felt every day. I no longer sought approval, no longer begged for attention or love. Instead, I nurtured my independence, my skills, and my confidence. The woman Malik thought he had diminished was rising stronger, wiser, and radiant in ways he could never anticipate. As I lay awake that night, planning the next steps of my journey, I realized something crucial. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it thrives in silence, in patience, in growth that leaves the other person stunned and powerless. And Malik, he had unwittingly ignited the very fire that would eventually consume him, not with anger, but with undeniable proof of my worth. I had found my hidden strength, and it was growing every single day. Months passed, and I watched my life shift in ways Malik could never have imagined. My small jewelry business, once a hobby he mocked, had flourished. Sales were climbing steadily, collaborations with social media influencers were bringing attention, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of control over my own destiny. Each order that shipped, each positive review I received, reminded me that I was capable, valuable, and unstoppable. Malik, of course, remained entirely unaware of my transformation. He carried on as if everything was the same, believing I was still the meek, fragile woman he married out of pity. He assumed his arrogance and dismissive attitude would continue to go unchallenged, and so I allowed him that illusion, smiling and nodding politely while silently plotting. Let him underestimate me. It made the eventual revelation all the sweeter. I began attending networking events, not for Malik, not for validation, but for myself. I dressed impeccably, exuding confidence in a way that made heads turn, drawing attention without ever seeming desperate for it. I engaged with influential people in my field, cultivated relationships, and learned to speak with authority. Every conversation, every handshake, every compliment I received was a building block, a quiet testament to the fact that I was no longer the woman he had dismissed. The whispers started. "Isn't that her?" Someone would murmur. "She looks incredible and so successful." I could see Malik noticing, though he tried to hide it. For the first time in years, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I smiled inwardly every time I caught it. This was the moment I had been waiting for, not a confrontation, not a fight, but a slow, inevitable shift in the way he perceived me. Meanwhile, I continued to grow both financially and emotionally. I invested in myself, learning more about business strategies, social media marketing, and personal branding. I took courses, read books, and surrounded myself with people who believed in me. Malik's ignorance of my efforts was a gift, allowing me to move undetected while building a life he could not imagine. And yet, my revenge was never about cruelty. It was about proof. Proof that I was capable, proof that I could rise above betrayal, and proof that his pity was irrelevant in the face of my determination. I wanted him to see me not as someone who had been dependent, fragile, or undeserving, but as a woman who had flourished in spite of his words. One evening, Malik mentioned a wedding invitation from a mutual friend. "You can come if you want," he said, his tone casual, almost indifferent. My heart skipped. This was the perfect stage. I would attend, not as the timid wife he assumed I would be, but as the embodiment of everything he had overlooked. I would show him, without a word of malice, that I was more than he had ever imagined. I began planning meticulously what I would wear, how I would present myself, and which acquaintances I would engage. Every detail mattered. The goal wasn't to humiliate him, but to reveal the truth, that I had grown, evolved, and thrived, quietly and intentionally. And when the moment came, he would finally understand the full measure of what he had dismissed. By the time the wedding arrived, I was ready, not just with appearance and confidence, but with the unshakable certainty that I had created a life of my own making. Malik could no longer define me, nor diminish me. I had become my own person, independent, radiant, and unstoppable, and soon he would see it all. The day of the wedding arrived like the turning point of a story I had been writing in my mind for months. I had chosen a stunning emerald dress that hugged my figure in all the right places, my hair cascading in soft waves over my shoulders. I had practiced my smile, my posture, and the subtle way I could carry myself so that every movement radiated confidence. I was ready, not just to be seen, but to be acknowledged by everyone, including Malik. From the moment I stepped into the venue, I felt the shift. Conversations paused, heads turned, and whispers rippled through the crowd. "Isn't that her?" someone murmured. "She looks incredible and successful." I smiled politely at the recognition, savoring the moment, but I knew that the most important reaction was yet to come. Malik did not recognize me at first. He had expected the same timid, dependent woman he had married years ago, the one he had married out of pity. But what he saw now was different, radiant, confident, self-assured. There was a quiet power in my presence that he could not ignore. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered with uncertainty, and for the first time in years I saw a trace of fear, or perhaps awe, cross his face. I walked through the crowd with grace, engaging with influential people, sharing my achievements with subtlety, and laughing genuinely at the small jokes that were shared my way. Every smile I received, every compliment I heard, reinforced the fact that I had built a life completely independent of him. The woman he once dismissed had not just survived, she had thrived. Malik tried to approach me later, attempting casual conversation, but I met him with polite distance. His words, once capable of wounding, now seemed powerless. He couldn't insult me, demean me, or belittle me anymore because I no longer defined myself by his perception. My worth was mine, cultivated through sweat, patience, and determination, and as I spoke with others, showing poise and success, I could see him absorbing the reality of what he had overlooked. The evening continued, each interaction a quiet victory. I had transformed betrayal into proof that resilience and ambition could outshine cruelty and dismissiveness. I didn't need to confront him with accusations or anger. My life, my confidence, and my accomplishments were the ultimate revelation. As the night drew to a close, Malik finally understood. The woman he had married out of pity was no longer someone he could dismiss or control. She was independent, accomplished, and unapologetically herself, and the best part, I had done it all without malice, without bitterness. I had let my success and self-respect speak louder than any words ever could. Driving home that night, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The weight of betrayal had been transformed into freedom. I realized that the sweetest revenge isn't humiliation. It's living so fully, so beautifully, and so independently that those who doubted you can't help but witness your triumph. Malik had learned a hard lesson not through confrontation but through the undeniable reality of my growth. For the first time in a long while, I smiled truly, not out of defiance, but out of fulfillment. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my happiness. The pain of his words had sparked a transformation that no one, not even him, could ever erase. Somewhere deep down, I knew that Malik would remember this night forever, not because I shouted or fought, but because I had become the woman he never thought could exist, radiant, unstoppable, and unapologetically powerful, and that knowledge brought me a peace far sweeter than any revenge could.